Welcome to our presentation on Islam. What you're hearing in the background is actual Islamic music from Arab states, Afghanistan, the Middle East, Iraq. And this is popular music and sacred music of the time. What you're seeing is the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem, a sacred city to Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. And here you see one of the rare examples of Islamic figurative art. You see a series of pilgrims that are actually sleeping under trees in an oasis on their way to visit the city of Mecca. Also, a remarkable thing that is given to us by the Arab people is beautiful calligraphy. And calligraphy makes a fantastic statement that people get to view the world over, even if they're not of the Arab states themselves. Calligraphy is a beautiful design motif that is used in place of art in much of Arab life. Another aspect of Arab life that doesn't get a lot of attention in our culture is the enormously complex designs and mosaics, especially exemplified in Arab carpets that we get in the West. Very, very beautiful Arabic carpets that are very beautifully inlaid with fantastic designs. Here you see an example of the Arab world stretching all the way from Spain, what's called the Carolingian Empire, the Empire of Charlemagne in the 5th and 6th century, going down to Africa, into Libya, into Egypt, over to the Middle East, and all the way into parts of India and Asia, all the way up into upper Greece. Here you see a marvelous image of Muhammad leaving Mecca in a mosaic. And Jesus, the prophet himself, is watching Muhammad with a watchful eye to make sure that Muhammad escapes alive, because the one prophet looks after the other. A big controversy, especially in France and many countries in Europe, is the idea of the burqa, of the niqab. The niqab and the burqa are two coverings that women wear on their heads. It's considered a symbol of piety. It's considered a symbol of modesty. But a lot of people in the West fear the burqa, thinking it hides terrorists. Mostly it's a religious observance. This is inside the great mosque of the Sultan Suleiman. Suleiman has a mosque in Istanbul. It's beautiful inside. It looks a lot like Hagia Sophia, which is another mosque also in Istanbul. But this was a mosque actually created to be a mosque, not necessarily a Christian church converted into a mosque space. Many people call the Mosque of Suleiman the Blue Mosque because it reflects the blue water around Istanbul, a port city, and also at night it has blue lights, and the blue of the sky reflects on the gold of the mosque itself. And here you see an example of the Blue Mosque as it's seen as the Blue Mosque at night, with the lights around the minarets that are rising in the background. And you see the fullness of the mosque, and you see the giant atrium around the mosque. It is very, very beautiful and fantastic. Istanbul is a beautiful city, and it has many aspects of Christian and Islamic culture. This is one of the great mosques. This is the great mosque of Cordoba in Spain. Again, remember, the Islamic Empire reached into Spain, and for many years Jews, Christians, and Islamic people lived together in harmony in Spain. And this is one of the great mosques of Cordoba. And here you see the vosieres, these rounded arches that are very, very important to the Islamic architecture. And what they do is they create this sense of infinite repetition. And as you can see, as you go through the mosque, it seems like they're unending. The mosque itself is a repetition of great infinitude. And here's another example of the vosieres, the rounded arches of the Islamic architecture. Again, looks a little different than the Roman architecture, doesn't it? And it's very pretty, very ornate, creates a lot of visual design in the building, and gives you this sense of repeating infinitude. This is a beautiful mosque. This is the Alhambra Palace in Granada, Spain. And here you see a group of gentlemen sitting out in front of the palace, just reading the paper and having lunch in the midday sun. Very, very beautiful. Again, you see the minarets rising, but you also see the domes of the Alhambra Mosque. The Alhambra Mosque at the Alhambra Palace is known for its lions in the courtyard. And you have these beautiful ornate columns, as you can see, with the fantastic designs at the top. You also see under the fountain in the center, you see the lions holding up the fountain. I went to a school called Alhambra High School. We were known as the Alhambra Lions, and we took all the symbols of the Alhambra Mosque as part of our culture. And here again you see the courtyard at midday, the sun and the shadows rising. You see the infinitude of the voussoirs, the rounded arches of the Arabic sculpture and architecture, and you see the lions underpinning the beautiful fountain in the center. And here again is another example of the fountain, and again the voussoirs, the beautiful rounded arches of the Arabic architecture. Very, very beautiful. Makes a fantastic design of the space. And then you're about to see the beautiful pool in the front of the Alhambra Palace. Really one of the most restful places in Granada, Spain. Sort of a respite from the city itself. Here, a place where a person can sit, read, meditate for hours at a time. A very, very beautiful and rapt attention. A great meeting place for Arab, Jewish, and Christian scholars in the Middle Ages. And again, notice the detail in the lions. They're almost like little dogs holding up this fountain. But the interesting thing is they're all very, very abstract, but we still understand what they're supposed to represent. Remember, for Islamic art, more often than not, it's not about representation. It's more about symbolizing an idea. This is the beautiful Topkapi Palace. In the 1960s, there was a very famous Oscar-nominated film called Topkapi about an attempt to steal a beautiful jewel-encrusted dagger from the Topkapi Palace. The Topkapi Palace was actually a ruling palace for the ruling caliphate. The caliphs were the rulers of the Islamic society. The caliphs were sort of like sheikhs. But the caliphate, when they actually left Istanbul and the Ottoman Empire broke apart, the palace was turned into a museum. And this is the Topkapi Museum from an aerial view. Very, very beautiful museum, as you can see on the hill. And as you can see, the seaway coming into Istanbul, Constantinople. A very, very beautiful city. A very, very gorgeous, ornate city. Remember, Turkey, one of the main springs of the Arab Spring, a 10% growth rate per year. This is a beautiful example here of Arab art itself. Again, many times Arab art seems very abstract, but here we have a good example of a sheikh meditating at a pavilion. The delicacy and the technique of the decorative patterns, two-dimensional quality art is very beautiful. And as you can see here, another example of palace life with figurative art, and you can see the caliphs and noblemen, people sitting in repose, people sitting and meditating. And again, you're going to see another sheikh or a holy man, perhaps a Sufi, in a seated pose in just a second. And here you see with the Arab script above, he is looking very pensively with nature around him, very simply dressed, with his headdress symbolizing his august stature, as well as the beard indicating age and wisdom. And another one of the examples of what the Arab culture has bestowed upon us is this is the beautiful calligraphy of the Arab culture, itself an artwork. As you can see, when people drew and painted like this, there wasn't a great need for a lot of design or figurative work, because the actual calligraphy itself is very, very beautiful just to look at as a style of drawing. This is one of the great monuments to one of the great pieces of literature from the Arab world, the 1001 Nights, the Tales of Scheherazade. This is Ali Baba, one of the 40 thieves, thinking a plot, and this is a Maxfield Parrish painting of him from the 19th century. And then we get to Sufism, the mysticism of Islam. This is just a discussion of a lecture, but again, the mystics of Islam are the Sufis. They dance, they spin, they do what's called whirling dervishes, which make them a little dizzy. But again, this is to infuse them with their religious state of ecstasy, and they dance. And here are the whirling dervishes in front of one of the mosques in Istanbul, and they're doing their symbolic dance. Again, they wear white, and they wear sort of like long skirts, so even the men, when they're dancing with their high fez hats on, whirl and look very, very beautiful in their design they make. And here again is another example of the whirling dervishes wearing their fezzes, again, dancing themselves into a state of ecstasy. And the men, once again, believe that this actually creates a religious experience for them. That actually by making themselves into a dance state like this, they can get closer to God. And again, getting out of their minds, getting out of their intellectual minds and getting into an emotional state where they can be receptive to the will of God. They are no longer blinded by their own needs and their own passions. They throw themselves over to their desire to serve their master Allah. And here you see older men here with their long hair pulled back, and they're throwing their heads forward, again, seeking that ecstatic moment of ecstasy through their Sufistic practice. Deeply religious people, obviously. Again, remember, prayer 5 times a day is one of the many codes of Islam. This is a good example of modern and ancient Islamic art. Again, the Islamics were very concerned about figurative art because, remember, they believed you couldn't really portray Allah as a human figure because Allah was greater than anyone could understand. So here we have these decorative designs that repeat and repeat. Here are the 5 pillars of Islam. Again, testimony and declaration of the faith. There is only one God. Prayer 5 times a day. Charity. Notice they only have to give 2.5%, but still they all have to give charity. Fasting during the month of Ramadan. They can't eat during the day. And the pilgrimage to Mecca at least once during their lifetime, if possible. And here we have a plate from ancient Iran, 12th century or before, and this gives you a sense of the decorative art and decorating art that actually adorns even plates, and even occasionally you do find figurative art in Iran. Remember, the Iranians are Persians, not necessarily of Arab descent, but here you see art that's very influenced by Asia, and once again, this gives you a sense of the expansion of the caliphate of the Arab Empire from the 6th century CE into the 12th or 14th century CE. And you can see in the early state, they're into Africa, they're into the Middle East, down to Mecca and Medina. And then you have the expansion of the caliphate into the 14th century, where they now encompass parts of Europe, parts of lower Greece and Macedonia, into Spain, into India in the east, controlling the entire Middle East and controlling large sections of the tip of Africa. And here, a beautiful picture of modern Istanbul, a moderate Arab country today, giving you a strong sense of why the Arab country of Turkey has been so successful as a port city and as a meeting place of people from the west and from the east, part of the Silk Route, the Silk trade route that dominated Europe and Asia during the 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th centuries. And here again, an aerial view of the Dome of the Rock. Again, a sacred place for Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. Beautiful church here, Muslim church with a Muslim dome in the city of Jerusalem.